Welcome to our lesson on stimulus prompts versus response prompts. This is original BCBA exam practice, not official BACB exam content. We will first locate the assistance, then compare fading and transfer, and then work through 15 scenario questions. The point is not to memorize a prompt hierarchy. It is to identify where help was applied and whether control has transferred to the natural cue. Our free BCBA mock exam is waiting on screen because the same task can look successful while the source of control is different. One learner may respond because a material feature was changed. Another may respond only after a verbal, model, gesture, or physical prompt. These 15 scenarios move from prompt location to fading, transfer of stimulus control, prompt dependency, and the difference between a prompt and reinforcement. They train us to ask where the assistance was applied, what must be faded, and whether the natural cue now controls the response. That prevents the common error of naming a fading procedure before identifying the prompt. This is a focused concept plus questions lesson, not a complete review of every task in the published outline. The first question is where the help lives. Prompt location, not the learner's success, determines the first classification. Locate the help before naming the fade. Changes the materials or cue makes the correct stimulus easier to select fade the added feature toward the natural cue adds, help to the learner's response verbal, model, gesture, or physical assistance fade assistance toward independent responding. A prompt is useful only if control can transfer. The instructional sequence should end with a natural cue doing the work. Prompted accuracy is a step, not the endpoint. Set up, present the task, and natural cue prompt, add stimulus or response assistance fade, reduce the added, help systematically transfer test independent responding. The same task can use different prompt locations. A changed color and a verbal hint may produce the same selection, but there are different prompt relations. Same response form is not equal to same prompt relation. Add or alter a feature of the cue correct selection becomes easier stimulus, fading removes that feature add help after the task, cue, the learner receives assistance, to respond response prompt, fading reduces that assistance. Name the prompt before choosing the fading move. Fading procedures are not interchangeable just because both reduce support. Location first, fading second. Decision, stimulus prompt, response prompt, where help changes materials, or cue learner's response, fading move remove, or reduce feature reduce assistance, or delay a common trap, calling a color response, prompt calling a verbal hint, stimulus fading, exam, move name, the altered stimulus name, the added assistance. Use a 4-step transfer check. When the wording is dense, reduce the prompt question to 4 observable checks. Independence requires transfer control, not just correct responding. 1. What was the natural cue? 2. What added help change performance? 3. How is that help being faded? 4. Does the natural cue now control? Fading is complete only when the natural cue works. A learner can be accurate and still depend on the prompt. The final test is what controls responding after the prompt is gone. Natural CUE instruction or material added helps stimulus or response, prompt fading plan, reduce the prompt independence, natural cue evokes response. Good prompting protects the next response. Prompt quickly enough to prevent repeated errors. Then plan the transfer instead of making the prompt permanent. A prompt is instruction. Independence is the outcome. Define, specify the natural cue and response prompt, deliver the least intrusive effective, help practice, reinforce accurate independent responses, transfer fade, and test new examples. The distractors sound plausible because the task looks the same. The best choice is the one that matches the prompt's location and the transfer plan. Locate, fade, transfer, then label the result. Location first, do not classify from the response form alone. Fade is not equal to transfer, reducing help does not prove natural control. More help is not equal to better extra prompts can strengthen dependence. Prompt is not equal to reinforcer assistance, and consequence have different jobs. Control last name, what evokes responding after fading. Before the first question, use 4 passes. Isolate the clue that changes the decision. Name the relation, history, measure, implementation issue, or sequence being tested. Test every option against that clue, rejecting any answer that adds missing evidence or solves a different problem. Then state the portable rule in your own words. We will read the complete stem and all 4 options, pause before the reveal, announce the correct answer once, and explain every distractor in relation to this exact case. Question 1. The correct word is printed in red, while distractors are black. Across trials, the red is faded until all words are black and correct selection remains. Which combination fits? A. Response prompt with most to least fading. B. Stimulus prompt with stimulus fading. C. Response prompt with time delay. D. Natural cue with no prompt. Pause and name the decisive relation before you choose. Choose B. Stimulus prompt with stimulus fading. An added feature changes the materials and is gradually removed. Color is a stimulus prompt. Reducing that feature is stimulus fading. The trap is that materials change and the extra feature fades equals stimulus fading. A. No assistance is applied to the learner's response. C. No response prompt is delayed. D. The added red color is an intentional prompt. Materials change and the extra feature fades equals stimulus fading. Question 2. Before a learner greets a peer, the therapist demonstrates waving and says, "Do this." The learner imitates the wave. What kind of prompt is the modeled wave? A. Stimulus prompt. B. Motivating operation. C. S delta. D. Response prompt. Hold the labels for a moment. Match the evidence to the options. The strongest answer is D. Response prompt. The therapist demonstrates the response the learner should perform. Model prompts are response prompts because they assist the form of the response. The trap is that modeling the target response equals response prompt. A. The instructional materials are not altered or supplemented. B. The event does not change reinforcer value. C. It is not a stimulus correlated with extinction. Modeling the target response equals response prompt. Question 3. During discrimination training, the correct picture card is made twice as large as the distractors. What type of prompt is this? A. Physical response prompt. B. Verbal response prompt. C. Stimulus prompt. D. Time delay. Choose the answer that the exact stem supports, not the one that sounds most familiar. On this stem, select C. Stimulus prompt. A feature of the antecedent materials is altered. Changing size increases the salience of the correct stimulus. The trap is that size, color, and shape are redundancy cues, not a fourth stimulus prompt form. A. No physical guidance of responding occurs. B. No verbal response help is provided. D. No delay before a prompt is manipulated. Size, color, and shape are redundancy cues, not a fourth stimulus prompt form. Question 4. During a comparison task, the teacher briefly moves the correct card while presenting the instruction, then gradually removes that movement across trials. Which prompt relation is illustrated? A. Movement stimulus prompt. B. Stimulus fading. C. Model response prompt. D. Establishing operation. Before the reveal, ask what the stem proves and what it leaves unknown. The evidence supports A. Movement stimulus prompt. Movement is added to the correct stimulus and then systematically faded. The movement changes the antecedent stimulus array, so it functions as a movement stimulus prompt. Removing that movement is stimulus prompt fading. The trap is that movement added to the correct stimulus and then faded equals movement stimulus prompt. B. Stimulus fading is the reduction procedure, not the prompt relation being identified. C. No model of the learner's response is presented. D. Reinforcer value is not altered. Movement added to the correct stimulus and then faded equals movement stimulus prompt. Question 5. A learner first receives full physical guidance for hand washing, then partial guidance, then a light touch, and finally no guidance. Which fading procedure is used? A. Least to most prompting. B. Stimulus fading. C. Most to least response prompt fading. D. Progressive time delay. Take a second pass. What must be true for each option to win? This question resolves to C, most to least response prompt fading. Strong response assistance is systematically reduced. Most to least fading begins with the most intrusive prompt and removes it across trials. The trap is that strong help weaker, help independence equals most to least. A. Assistance is not increasing from least to most. B. No feature of the materials is faded. D. The main manipulation is prompt level, not waiting time. Strong help weaker, help independence equals most to least. Question 6. A therapist initially models the answer immediately after the instruction. Across sessions, the therapist waits 2, then 4, then 6 seconds before modeling. Which procedure is used? A. Stimulus shaping. B. Progressive time delay. C. Least to most prompting. D. Stimulus fading. Pause and name the decisive relation before you choose. Choose B. Progressive time delay. The interval before a response prompt increases systematically. Progressive time delay creates a growing opportunity for independent responding. The trap is that increasing wait before a response prompt equals progressive time delay. A. The stimulus itself is not gradually transformed. C. Prompt type is not escalated within a trial. D. No stimulus feature is reduced. Increasing wait before a response prompt equals progressive time delay. Question 7. A learner responds correctly only after a therapist says, "Remember, touch red." What is the most direct teaching priority? A. Add a stronger verbal prompt permanently. B. Remove reinforcement for all correct responses. C. Change the target response. D. Transfer control to the natural instruction and color stimulus. Hold the labels for a moment. Match the evidence to the options. The strongest answer is D. Transfer control to the natural instruction and color stimulus. Correct responding depends on an extraverbal prompt. Prompts should be faded so the natural antecedent controls the response. The trap is that prompting succeeds only when control transfers to the natural cue. A. Permanent extra prompts increase dependency. B. Withholding reinforcement for all correct responses would not transfer control and could weaken the target response. Reinforce independent correct responding according to the teaching plan. C. The response can remain while stimulus control changes. Prompting succeeds only when control transfers to the natural cue. Question 8. The correct item begins closest to the learner. Across trials, its position is moved until all items are equally distant and selections remain accurate. What procedure is illustrated? A. Stimulus fading. B. Physical prompt fading. C. Fixed time delay. D. Response shaping. Choose the answer that the exact stem supports, not the one that sounds most familiar. On this stem, select A. Stimulus fading. An added positional cue is gradually reduced. Changing the stimulus arrangement toward the natural display is stimulus fading. The trap is that gradually neutralizing an added stimulus feature is stimulus fading. B. No physical guidance is reduced. C. No wait interval is manipulated. D. The form of the response is not shaped. Gradually neutralizing an added stimulus feature is stimulus fading. We are halfway. Notice how the first 8 questions separate stimulus changes from response assistance, then connect fading to transfer of control and prompt dependency. If you missed one, name whether you mislocated the help, confused fading with independence, or treated a prompted response as proof that the natural cue controls. The second half keeps the same routine. Locate the assistance, identify the fade, and test what evokes the response. Question 9. After an instruction, a teacher waits. Using a hierarchy assess for this learner as progressively more controlling. The teacher gives a brief verbal hint, then a model, then physical guidance. Which procedure is described? A. Most to least prompting. B. Stimulus fading. C. Least to most prompting. D. Constant time delay. Before the reveal, ask what the stem proves and what it leaves unknown. The evidence supports C. Least to most prompting. Prompt assistance increases only after less help fails. Least to most begins with an independent opportunity and adds progressively more controlling prompts as needed. The trap is that independent chance increasing help equals least to most. A. Most to least begins with an effective controlling prompt and then reduces help. B. The antecedent task stimulus is not gradually changed. D. The defining feature is the prompt hierarchy, not one fixed delay. Independent chance increasing help equals least to most. Question 10. A learner has answered correctly without help on prior trials, but now routinely waits for the therapist's verbal hint. Which adjustment most directly addresses this pattern? A. Deliver the verbal hint earlier. B. Systematically fade or delay the verbal prompt while reinforcing independent responses. C. Make the verbal hint longer. D. Change to a more intrusive prompt permanently. Take a second pass. What must be true for each option to win? This question resolves to be: systematically fade or delay the verbal prompt while reinforcing independent responses. Prior independent correct responses show the skill is available, but current responding is controlled by the therapist's hint. Fading or delaying the response prompt creates opportunities for natural stimulus control. The trap is that prompt dependency calls for a planned transfer of control procedure. A. Earlier hints strengthen prompt dependence. C. Making the same hint longer does not systematically transfer control to the natural cue. D. Permanent stronger prompts preserve the problem. Prompt dependency calls for a planned transfer of control procedure. Question 11. A teacher begins with a 0-second model prompt. After successful trials, the teacher waits 4 seconds before the model on every subsequent trial. Which procedure is used? A. Progressive time delay. B. Stimulus fading. C. Least to most prompting. D. Constant time delay. Pause and name the decisive relation before you choose. Choose D. Constant time delay. The delay changes from 0 to 1 fixed non-zero value. Constant time delay uses an initial 0-second delay followed by a stable delay interval. The trap is that 0 seconds, 1 fixed delay equals constant time delay. A. Progressive delay increases across several values. B. No material feature is gradually reduced. C. A hierarchy of stronger prompts is not added within the trial. 0 seconds, 1 fixed delay equals constant time delay. Question 12. The correct comparison card is initially placed closest to the learner. Across trials, its position is gradually equalized with the distractors. Which description is most accurate? A. A movement stimulus prompt is faded. B. A physical prompt is increased. C. A positional stimulus prompt is faded. D. A verbal prompt is delayed. Hold the labels for a moment. Match the evidence to the options. The strongest answer is C. A positional stimulus prompt is faded. The location of the instructional material changes and is gradually normalized. Position is a stimulus feature. Reducing the positional difference is stimulus fading. The trap is that a location cue built into the array is a stimulus prompt. A. No movement prompt such as pointing or tapping is described. The card's position is gradually equalized, so this is positional stimulus prompt fading. B. Physical assistance is not described. D. No verbal prompt or delay is used. A location cue built into the array is a stimulus prompt. Question 13. After instruction, a teacher waits 5 seconds. Using a hierarchy assess for this learner as progressively more controlling, the teacher gives a brief verbal hint. If needed, then a model and physical guidance. What makes this least to most? A. Help begins at the strongest level. B. Prompt assistance increases only after an independent opportunity. C. The stimulus materials change color. D. The delay increases across sessions. Choose the answer that the exact stem supports, not the one that sounds most familiar. On this stem, select B. Prompt assistance increases only after an independent opportunity. The learner first has a chance to respond without help. Least to most begins with an independent opportunity and then adds more controlling prompts only as needed. The trap is that independent chance escalating help equals least to most. A. Strongest first describes most to least. C. No stimulus feature changes. D. A progressive delay across sessions is not described. Independent chance, escalating help equals least to most. Question 14. A therapist gradually reduces physical guidance while the final response form stays the same. Why is this prompt fading rather than shaping? A. The antecedent assistance changes while the target response criterion remains constant. B. Reinforcement is withheld for all approximations. C. The target response is replaced every trial. D. The materials become larger. Before the reveal, ask what the stem proves and what it leaves unknown. The evidence supports A. The antecedent assistance changes while the target response criterion remains constant. The response goal stays constant while assistance is reduced. Prompt fading transfers stimulus control. Shaping changes the reinforced response criterion across approximations. The trap is that fading changes help. Shaping changes the reinforced approximation. B. Fading can still use reinforcement. C. The target response remains the same. D. No size-based stimulus prompt is described. Fading changes help. Shaping changes the reinforced approximation. Question 15. A program begins with an immediately effective model prompt to minimize errors and then fades the model. Which statement is most accurate? A. Errorless teaching describes the arrangement. The model itself is a response prompt. B. The model is a stimulus prompt because it occurs before the response. C. Errorless teaching eliminates the need for a transfer plan. D. Any model prompt is automatically a motivating operation. Take a second pass. What must be true for each option to win? This question resolves to A. Errorless teaching describes the arrangement. The model itself is a response prompt. The strategy minimizes errors, while the model assists the response form. Errorless teaching and prompt type answer different questions. Lesson arrangement versus location of assistance. The trap is that do not confuse an instructional strategy with the prompt component inside it. B. Temporal position alone does not make a stimulus prompt. C. Errorless teaching still requires planned transfer from the controlling prompt to the natural antecedent through fading, delay, or program probes. D. A model does not necessarily change reinforcer value. Do not confuse an instructional strategy with the prompt component inside it. Across these 15 questions, the durable move is to locate the help before naming the procedure. If the materials or stimulus features change, the prompt is applied to the stimulus. If assistance is added to the learner's response, it is a response prompt. Fading is the planned reduction of that help, and independence requires the natural cue to control responding. Do not treat a successful prompted response as proof of transfer. Ask what changed, what was removed, and what now evokes the response. If this lesson helped, keep practicing with our free BCBA mock exam for time questions. Then use our quick study guide to review the relation behind each miss. The links are shown on screen. Subscribe, share the item that made you pause, and return for the next lesson. We are building a clearer BCBA exam library, one deciding detail at a time. Use our quick study guide for a slower pass through the definitions, contrasts, examples, and exam traps from this lesson. The complete guide link is shown on screen, and the free BCBA mock exam is ready when you want to test transfer. We are building a clearer study routine together.